Hello and welcome back to Crit and Crit. I'm Sint.
I'm Axion.
And we are continuing our discussion of Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire while we play through Final Fantasy V. And after an incredibly long recap of a rather long book, we are moving on to our first topic, which is something that neither of us is probably expected to talk about, which is sports ball. But it wouldn't really be a discussion of Goblet of Fire if we didn't talk about the importance of sports because, well, the entire story is centralized around two major international sporting events, which are basically, as sometimes used today, international diplomacy. For an in real life equivalent, the most obvious one would be the Olympics. It is a huge deal as to who gets to host the Olympics, and in past years it has been a political statement as to whether or not you will attend. Like, the ones that jump to mind to me are the boycotts in the 80s of Moscow, and I believe it was Salt Lake City Olympics. I don't remember which one it was for us that they boycotted in return.
Right, I forgot that happens.
I'm assuming you mean in game and not retaliation boycotts.
Right.
But yeah, so obviously the two events in the book proper are the Quidditch World Cup, because Wizarding apparently has exactly one sport, which we could probably go into a lot of discussion of what other sports could be possible if you have magic and sufficient willingness to flip the bird to all odds of physics, but I don't blame Rowling for only wanting to come up with one, because Quidditch is chaotic is a word for it.
Yeah, that's a way to put it.
But yeah, the Quidditch World Cup. So this is the sport that every wizard in which goes insane for, and it's a huge deal, and it's being hosted in England. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to go see it, so we're gonna go see it. And yeah, it's a big deal. Like, Harry, Ron, and Hermione are like 14. This is obviously something they'd be into, so...
And it is very quickly made clear that this is considered a big thing with the other students, to the point that some of them are lamenting their inability to attend, while others are still talking about what they saw there, even just within the context of the game itself, rather than the plot-relevant stuff that happened there. Well into the story proper, basically until the Goblet of Fire, the Triwizard Tournament, officially starts.
And, like, I think that makes sense. Like, I'm not sure, I didn't remember if there was specifically, like, a time span mentioned for, like, if the World Cup is annual, or if it's like the Olympics, or if it's every 4 years or something, but sometimes you see an event that is very rare to get to. Like, if it's equivalent to our American Super Bowl, it happens once a year, and people will talk about that stuff basically until the next sports season rolls around and distracts them. So yeah, that makes total sense. If this is something you're interested in, it is going to be a huge deal for you. I mean, like, it's not sports, and there's not quite the same, like, time frame with this, but when I have gotten to see, like, live theater, I tend to obsess over that for a fair bit. Don't judge me. But it is a big deal. Like, you get to go live and see this thing that you're really enthused about, and it's a big deal. So, yeah, I can't make fun of the kids for that.
Yep, no, I was not meaning to say that they were in any way wrong. It's just,
right. This
is clearly a big deal for wizarding youths. And for some adults as well. And it's definitely not something that just anyone can go to, mostly just because you have to buy the tickets. And, like, Neville mentions that he wasn't able to go because his grandmother wasn't willing to pay what the tickets cost.
And yeah, that's a pretty real thing too. Like, so many of these like major events, like supply and demand, it's a thing. Everybody wants it, so the prices are going to be through the nose unless you can get very lucky and get tickets from work or through a contest. So, yeah. But what I kind of wanted to focus on was not just, oh hey, sport, they exist, but the role that sports can play in the wider world as a whole. For the most part, sports are very often seen, and some desperately cling to it this way, as an escape from everything else about the world. Things might be on fire, but you can always watch somebody hit a ball with a stick. And that's fine. Escapism is great. But there have been many, many, many instances of sports being used as a political tool in one fashion or other, like I'd mentioned the Olympics with the 88 boycott, and other instances thereof. So, using sports to push a political agenda is not an alien prospect, and I believe it shows up as well in the Harry Potter universe. I mean, you can see that it's a huge deal for England to be hosting the tournament. Everybody's there, and their government is going absolutely insane trying to make sure that they can maintain wizarding secrecy as best they can. So, of course, when there is, I don't really have a better way to put it, a terrorist attack at the World Cup, it is obviously front page news, and everybody starts to worry. They're fortunate in that nobody was permanently harmed. Like, there were memory charms around for the Muggles, which we can get into the ethics of that at another juncture if we so choose. But given what the Dark Mark represents to wizarding kind, it showing up was enough to just cause an absolute mass panic, and it's extremely fortunate that it was just basically, I'm going to scare people, rather than I'm actually going to cause lasting harm because I am a card-carrying villain with a skull tattoo.
And by what happens later in the book, it absolutely was intended to be basically a rallying cry to get all those people hurt. It's just that most of
I'm not sure. Like, if you remember what Crouch actually said, he did it because he was angry seeing the people who he knew used to be among Voldemort's ranks just having fun like this when they had deserted his master. So he said that he summoned it because he wanted to put the fear of God into them, because you're the traitors and look how you run from it. So it was not meant as a rallying cry at that specific moment. I do not think.
Fair point.
Any other time in the series, absolutely, yes, it's going to be used for that, but at this point in time, it was... yeah.
Voldemort does call them on it, though, on that regard, saying that all of you were just playing around with the Muggles instead of doing what I would have preferred you be doing to them. And when Crouch sent up the Dark Mark, you all scattered because your fun had been ruined.
Yep. But yeah, international cooperation was very much a big thing. Like, something I kind of wanted to note is the referee for the match was very deliberately not of either British Isles or Bulgarian nationality, so there would not have been any inherent favoritism there.
Right. One less thing to accuse of cheating.
Yep. So, yeah. There was a lot of very, very careful, we are trying to make good relations between our countries. Cornelius Fudge just showing around the Bulgarian Minister of Magic, who, while he was having fun with him, was, still very polite, very professional. But, yeah. So, it was just a pretty typical sporting event that was on an international stage, which is nice, right after the Dark Mark happens. So that kind of sets the tone for the Triwizard Tournament happening. It is, even more so than the World Cup, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity because, as they mentioned, the Triwizard Tournament had been cancelled some 50 years before because too many competitors had been dying. Which is always something you want to hear when you are opening a contest to high school students.
Yep.
So, yeah. But it is also a very deliberate overture between 3 major European wizarding schools. So they very much emphasize international cooperation, which some people take to far more easily than others. I remember that Ron is first excited when Durmstrang shows up because Krum is with them and sports fans hello.
Yep.
On the other hand, at the Yule Ball, he starts kind of losing it and accusing Hermione of, quote, fraternizing with the enemy because Krum asked her to the dance. Now, there's probably more we can read into that than just, we want Hogwarts to win it, you're playing games with this opponent. It's probably also the fact that, as Hermione says, you know, other people have realized I'm a girl just because it took you 4 years to figure it out. This is where the shipping wars begin.
Oh boy.
But
we'll have a full
can
episode on that later.
But yeah, and basically as soon as the Goblet of Fire becomes a factor, things immediately start falling apart because the rules are clearly put down, 3 schools, 3 champions. But someone, cough cough, we later know it is the Death Eater Barty Crouch Jr., has hexed the situation to allow a 4th school where Harry is the only candidate, so he's forced to compete in these very deadly games. Everybody assumes that Harry is cheating, that he wanted to get into it, that he is trying to get more fame because, you know, being the most famous person in the world is not enough. I don't know. I don't get that. But, yeah. Many people that would have normally been on his side turn against him because they think that he's trying to steal Cedric Diggory's thunder when Harry doesn't actually really want to compete that much. And would probably prefer just to be watching the games with everybody else.
Yep.
So, yeah. Madame Maxime and Karkaroff both accused Dumbledore of rigging the game himself to try and give Hogwarts a bigger piece of the pie, and I'm honestly surprised it doesn't fall apart then and there. But it just goes on and on like that. You get favoritism from the judges, where Karkaroff goes out of his way to make sure to mark down people who might outscore his own champion, and everybody goes out of their way to cheat. Okay, everybody, Karkaroff and Maxime go out of their way to cheat. Harry just kind of gets things dropped into his lap because he's Harry, and this just seems to happen for him. So, yeah, it's you think for something that was so hinged on international diplomacy and honor and good relations, there would be much stricter safeguards against foul play and cheating. But there are not, which culminates in Crouch admitting under his Veritaserum confession later that he put Krum under the Imperius Curse to force him to attack Cedric because he was trying to clear the way for Harry to get to the Portkey and go to Voldemort, because this is the most convoluted plan known to man, and it still somehow worked.
I mean, it really only worked because narrative causality, more or less.
Yeah, just imagine, like, okay, first step, we have to crash this international tournament that has taken basically 50 years to convince people to redo. We want to put this 14-year-old kid in up against 17-year-olds who've had twice as long at this school to practice what they know, and make sure we can away for him in a way that doesn't look like we've been giving him help, but we're absolutely going to give him help because have you met him, he's hopeless. To make sure he can get here under very specific circumstances for this very specific ritual. And even then it doesn't work exactly as they planned because Harry gets away. And they now have an extra body to explain. So, yeah, if it had gone exactly as they wanted, Harry would have basically disappeared without a trace.
Yep.
So, yeah. But that's kind of getting a little off track of the international diplomacy thing. What is your take on that? Do you think this was a smart way to do international diplomacy, or do you think maybe not?
It's not really all that different from how things are handled in real life, just streamlined. Okay, apparently we can't go talk to the dragon yet. So, as you mentioned, we have some similarities to this in the real life, with things like the Olympics, where a lot of the original purpose of the Olympics, which has been lost over time, as you mentioned, was to... Okay, I forgot about that line.
Well,
was to foster international cooperation and friendship and friendly sportsmanship and all that fun stuff. And of course, as anyone nowadays would know, that's not really how it's handled anymore. It's kind of become a... what's the word I'm looking for?
not sure.
I'm completely brain blanked right now on what I was trying to say.
They're more competitive.
Yeah, it's competition and specifically competing for attention and respect and basically bragging rights.
I mean, to some extent, I've seen that happen with just most sports, even outside of like an international competition or anything. Like,
oh, absolutely.
It's like, yeah, you're a team, but you're always naming that one player. So where's the cooperation even on your own side? But I digress.
And even just in our lifetimes, we can think of, like, when somebody talks about basketball, for example, you don't... Usually, most people who aren't really big fans of a specific team and know all the details backwards and forwards usually don't think of every member of the team or the team as a whole, unless the team as a whole is like winning everything right now. We tend to think of the most famous individual participants. We think of Michael Jordan, we think of Magic Johnson, we think of Shaquille O'Neal, we think of...
Don't ask me for basketball players, like, I know Space Jam.
I was honestly going through the list of people in Space Jam, and then I ran out of
Yeah. Yep. But, yeah, like, and this isn't just for sports. Like, even, like, I'm going back to theater. Even knowing that, like, you cannot put on a play without everybody, cast and crew and pit and everyone working together, I do not think there is a single person in existence who can... Okay, there's some people who can, but most people are going to say, oh yeah, that lead, that supporting actor, and the chorus and pit and everybody are there too. Which really is unfortunate because it downplays just how collaborative an effort something like that really is, but it is kind of the nature of the beast, unfortunately.
Yep, and we've seen the consequences of that, obviously in real life, but also in things like, we mentioned it in the last episode, Phantom of the Opera. A lot of the drama in Phantom of the Opera is driven by who gets to be the prima donna. If I remember correctly, at least. It's been a while since I actually watched.
I mean, a lot of the grief is due to the fact that there is a superstition that the place is haunted and weird things keep happening, and they keep specifically happening to freak out the prima donna. But we should honestly just do a series on Phantom of the Opera in the future. We can talk about this more at length then.
It's on the list.
Excellent. But, yeah, and sometimes I do think that, like, there are times when sports can absolutely send a very potent political message. The ones that come to mind for me, unfortunately, both center around 1930s. I don't like that we have to keep pointing out that standing up to Nazis, because Nazis are completely irredeemable, but we have to keep pointing that out. But the ones that come to mind are the boxing match between Joe Louis and Max. Let me look it up real quick.
Wait.
Schmeling. Max Schmeling. So Joe Louis defeated him, which was a huge deal because Joe Louis was African American, and the whole extreme racism, eugenics, master race nonsense. And the other one is also to do with that ideology and Jesse Owens cleaning up at the Royal Olympics.
Right.
Of course, we can also go into the fact that after winning those medals, Jesse Owens was still treated like a second-class citizen at best here, but getting off track again.
Yep. Just because one is better than the other does not make the one good. It just means they're less bad in some cases. Which we will get into that topic later in Harry Potter as well.
Yep, but I'm not sure what really else I can add on sports and politics without going into stuff that I'm very clearly out of my depth on, because I can barely tell.
We didn't really touch on the Triwizard Tournament all that much, other than giving out the basics of the arrangement.
I'm not really sure what else there is to say. A champion from each school, and just to show it's an international competition where the students have the chance to get to know each other through the Yule Ball and stuff. There's not a whole lot to it beyond that. We talk about the tasks and the expectation that they're supposed to solve them, which all of them probably
I guess it just felt shorter than it was, since the Quidditch part took up so much time.
Well, the Quidditch part, we were also establishing a lot of other ground stuff on this, but
yeah, that's fair. Well, that'll give me time to figure out where I'm supposed to go next, anyway.
Getting lost is your hobby in this. Anyway,
it's been a long time since I played FF5, and like most early RPGs, it's kind of not super great about telling you what to do next. Anyway, we will continue next time.
See ya!
See you later.